Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us on our second in series with Mr. Daniel Hohm from, he's in Manchester right now. I'm your host, Nicholas Haffter von Heide with the International Euphonium Summit Living History Series. Thank you, Daniel, for coming back on.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Really happy to be back.
Awesome. So I kind of want to touch base right before the British Open concert or competition happened the first weekend of September, first full weekend of September. We had covered our first in series with you and went with and you are the principal euphonium player for Leyland Band, and you performed Sand and Stars as the test piece for that. Care to kind of reflect on your experience, especially not to mention the heat that the band endured during the British Open?
Yeah, it was amazing. It was my first time at the British Open, but also my first time playing in Symphony Hall in Birmingham. And most of you won't know that hall, but it's one of the best we have in the UK. Big hall, lots of wood. It's just gigantic. I think they had around 2,000 people listening to the competition. Um, so that was part of the experience, and then just being there with my band. I think that was the second really, really big contest I did with them. Um, Having that pressure, performing well, um, that's just something that was, sometimes you have those events on your calendar, and in 2 months, 3 months, there's something happening. And the moment it happens, you just sit back and enjoy. That was one of those moments.
That's incredible. So you were savoring the moment as you're sitting there before the concert, as you're playing, and then as the feature solo during that composition, to reflect on that and to even stay in that moment presently, as we talked about in the podcast segment right before this, is practicing being present.
Yeah, yeah. I think there we always prepare for performance, but there's always some element of well, it's just different when you actually perform. If you if you're a college student and you play for your classmates, that's a different sense of nerves than you get when you perform for your own, and then you have a public performance that's different. And it's the same thing between playing a normal concert with a good band like Leyland and being on the stage performing at the big contest, and then having to play that cadenza. And um, well, you can easily get sidetracked of your thoughts at that moment, because if you it's very easy to just have that voice in your head going, don't dare to mess it up now. Obviously those are the thoughts that are not helpful when you actually do it. So having the focus on the music is something I always try to do. And I think the cadenza was quite successful. I played. I ended up falling of a high E flat at the end, so was a high treble clef, high treble clef E flat, and I had to hold it for 9 beats. Actually, ended up doing four something. So that's something I'm not really happy about, obviously. But reflecting on that, I was at first was quite dissatisfied because I had built all that muscles and embouchure to actually play it, and it wasn't the lifts that actually made me fall off that note. It was just air support, um, which is something I'm working on right now. It's definitely improving, and I think that experience was a gentle reminder for me to keep working on blowing air through the instrument.
So, with that being said, in practicing being present, how did you come back to the moment after that and to finish out that Sand and Stars so like adamantly? I know it's the repetition and the practice that you've put into that piece, but how did you come back mentally when you feel like you fell?
Yeah, it was that it actually took, I don't know, 20, 25 seconds to realize that, and having, like, you can't really prepare for that moment, and then something happens and you have those thoughts in your head. Oh, that was really bad. Why
Mm-hmm.
did you do that? Is it really worth carrying on? Um, and obviously, it's okay if those thoughts pop up, but you just need to fight back. And
Mm-hmm.
to be honest, the whole middle section of the piece wasn't really good, and that was the main reason why we didn't place as high as we wanted to in the contest. But there wasn't just me. There was a moment in the band where we went like, okay, that's over now. We're going to do our best on the section that follows now. And if you listen back to it, uh, going into the Arabic dance, everything was fine from then.
It sure was. You guys flew, and that was really cool to watch how the band succeeded in overcoming the that moment and those moments, and to even see your reactions and how you listening to how you overcome came those moments and that moment specifically and finishing strong.
Yeah, yeah. It reminded me of, it was worse when I was playing piano, but there I was a very normal piano student, and I actually experienced this a lot when I listened to mostly freshers and second years at college playing. It's more on keyboard instruments, to be honest. They play something and there's a minor error, something that just happens on the way, wrong, accidental or something, and then around 5 to 10 seconds later there's a big mistake, and that usually happens because they keep thinking about that missed accidental whatever, and then the kind of brain activity is fixed to that, and yeah. So I
Let's
think that's something you learn to be in the moment of the performance, just think forwards, and obviously something that's not easy, but definitely improving.
well, I mean, to be honest, that the Birmingham Hall, the Symphony Hall there, like I had mentioned at the forefront of this recording, was a bit excessively hot. To be honest, I mean, we covered that with Dr. Joel Collier with the Corey Band as part of our cohort as well. And
Mm.
the endurance that these incredible musicians from all the bands, not to mention the concert goers who were there all day, had to endure listening to each band perform these works, this particular work. That has I think that has a little bit more grace to be added upon each performance as well.
I think, yeah, there were a couple of those environmental things that happened to a performance. It was well, the heat obviously was a thing, and well, Corey Band were drawn, I think, ninth in the contest. We played 16th, so there's good 3-4 hours between that, and it only got hotter and hotter. That was one thing. Then we played after Foden's band, who obviously
True.
won the
Yeah.
contest. So we were standing behind the curtain listening to the end of the winning performance. And also when we went on stage, 2/3 left the hall because they wanted to listen to the big great bands, and obviously they struggled with the heat and just wanted to leave, which is totally fine. And I think that was something that could have impacted the performance, but well, at least for me, if I think back, that was not something I really thought about when I was sitting on stage. I think it's a mental skill to just ignore that sort of stuff, just focus on performing in that moment.
That's really awesome. I love that. I mean, that goes to your whole practicing being present, and that mindset that we were talking about before this series recording here on the that leads me to what you're currently doing over at the RNCM and this year's final year project. Why don't you tell us about that? Because I think that leads really well into that.
It does, yeah, yeah. Thank you for mentioning that. So at the Royal Northern, we have to do a creative project in fourth year. So that's a 20 credit module, I think. And you basically have to do something that has to do with music, and you're being marked on the reflections on how the project went. And I wasn't sure what to do for a long time. And then I thought about, what am I good at? What am I passionate about? And I've been on quite an interesting personal journey in the last 2 years that have to do with personal growth. And that's an area that, at least here, we call it health and well-being. And I decided to make that into a podcast that looks on the positive side of health and well-being, and how to achieve those in a setting like a conservatoire. And so I'm going to be talking about strategies for personal growth, mindsets, just something I want to maybe give younger students who come to college. And I think I would have really appreciated if I found a resource like that podcast when I first came there.
That's awesome. That's really cool. So, and you've already recorded your first episode, correct?
No, I'm preparing it at
Oh,
the
you're
moment.
preparing it. Okay, that's pretty cool though. I can't wait. And for those that are watching this, once it's posted, I'll put the links down below and on internationaleuphoniumsummit.com/Daniel-Hohm for further resources for Daniel and on his journey going forward. So we certainly wish you the best of luck and lots of listeners.
Thank you. Yeah.
Awesome. So stepping forward into, you'd mentioned looking at the calendar and seeing the main performances of the year. You have two coming up, the Nationals and the British Nationals and the Austrian Brass Band Nationals.
Oh yeah. I was very, very happy to be asked to help the brass band Oberösterreich out on their performance. And it's quite interesting because the set piece for their nationals is the set piece for the British Open last year, which I didn't play. I actually played the piece once, but it's just really really great to work on it again.
What
And
piece is that?
it's called "The World Rejoicing" by Edward Gregson. Variations on a Lutheran chorale, which is something nice to have as a British person, suppose. But it's a really, really well-known hymn tune in Germany. And I just love it every time I hear a segment of the tune. And Gregson just quotes himself throughout the work. It's just really, really lovely to see all the quotes popping up. Uh, love the piece. It's great to work on it. And the Austrian Nationals also include an own choice piece. Um, uh, I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. But we're working on a really really great piece that's been played at the Europeans and at the British Open a couple of years ago, and so it's also a big challenge, but a lot of fun to work on it.
So
Obviously,
you can disclose that after the Austrian Nationals on the next in series with you. That'd be really awesome. I'm looking forward to hearing your the band's rendition of "The World's Rejoicing." That's really cool. And then you have the Nationals the week before.
exactly, yeah. So the British Nationals, obviously the big thing with the band I regularly play for Leyland. It's 3 weeks to go, and we're also playing a piece by Edward Gregson. It's called "Of Men and Mountains," written in 1992, I believe, when he was in Canada and he was inspired by a long train journey. I don't know, he saw probably a lot of snow and mountains, and then, well, he wrote a very long piece for that time. I think it's 17, 18 minutes long. And they said it can't be played at the British Nationals because it's too long. Now they do it, 20 bands on a 17, 18-minute piece, which means they're going to need 10 hours. It's 10 hours of playing, probably half an hour of break in the middle. They start at 10, I believe. So the contest isn't going to finish earlier than 8:30 p.m.
Right, just like the British Open, uh, right?
Well, they had 18 bands, so
Oh, that's
a
right.
bit less. Well, and I'm really really happy I don't have to adjudicate the contest. I think they actually have the hardest job that they.
I think so too. Um, so much appreciation to the adjudicators for sure, for sitting in those seats for so long, to listening to all these great bands, and to find finally kind of dissect each individual element into these
Yeah.
competitions. That's really fantastic. And we'll put the link to the World of Brass to where they can you can watch the live stream on that day, because I think it's being live streamed, isn't it?
I I think yeah, I think they'll live stream the nationals for the first time. But even if they don't, there's going to be a recording of it afterwards.
That's cool. I'm looking forward to seeing even some pictures from Daniel and the band at Leyland there, to see and to add as part of his journey in his career as he goes along. I forgot to mention that about, and we'll cover that on the segment post show recording here. Boy, howdy! I really appreciate you coming on and talking about and reflecting on the British Open, and how you overcame some your struggles that you're having while performing, with all the different environmental conditions and other things going on mentally and emotionally, and being able to be vulnerable for our audience, and to share those. how to recuperate and to move forward as a band, as an individual. I think that's really important, especially when you know you're launching this podcast in relation to health and welfare, with the mindset in the students going into the conservatoires across the globe. I think that is definitely the most value added that you can bring at this moment, in addition to performing.
Oh yes, yeah. I think we talk a lot about performance experience, which is obviously one of the main things you have when you study. But reflecting on those and taking something with you every time you perform, that's a difficult task. And uh, I think, in particular for me, when I came here to study, there was a lot of space for personal growth. And if you just come out of high school, you may feel like you understood how life works. But if you then move to a different city, maybe different country, you live on your own, you're very free in what you do, with your time. There's That's life then, and there's a lot to learn, a lot to experience, and I just hope I can maybe support and inspire some people, um, uh, with the opportunities they have for personal growth as well as in their studies.
Absolutely. So we kind of, I kind of want to touch base with this now as opposed to the post show. We talked about this kind of beforehand with the younger students and those who are on the verge of dropping off their musical aspirations or the potential. What would you, how would you approach or provide the mindset of sharing, to be present at such a young age? You're much younger than I am, so you're a little bit closer to understanding their mindsets as opposed to me being a parent and going through that as a parent. How would you share that, being present and being patient with yourself? Kind of what we talked about on the first episode in your series, in the video, is practicing self patience and being forgiving.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think that's one big thing. Um, every time I work with kids, I have to remind myself how their attention works, because it's just different than being an adult. Even if it's just strategies how to park your thoughts and to focus on something, it's harder for kids. And you obviously have to support that when you're teaching, but also I think I would have profited from practice strategies as a kid. Um, um, there's there's something, as long as music is just a hobby, you think everything is fun. But I mean, similar to how life generally works, there are areas and work you do that's very rewarding, but it's not fun when you do it. And I think the main task to stay motivated is finding the balance between those two things. You could obviously just force the kid to practice technical stuff 4 hours every day. They would drop out very quickly. You could also just have the kid improvising. Well, improvisation is great, and and doodling through some stuff every day, which is also great, and they might have fun, but they wouldn't experience that learning step by step. Um, and so, well, if you're listening and you're in college or something, you have to find the right balance for yourself. That's the main point. Um, I think it's easier to say about technical studies, you need to do this and you need to do that. But when it comes to music and playing music that makes you happy and that means something to you, that's very individual, and everyone needs to find something that's fun to them. I think not forgetting the fun part about music in daily practice isn't that easy. And I've actually found something myself the last couple of weeks with Bodoni studies. I just love them. I don't know if I talked about those in the last
Let's
session.
talk about that now.
Um, it's it's great music. You can do so much rubato, so much pulling around, good chords, harmony, chromatic stuff, key changes. There's just so much to experiment around within music. Um, and that's just why I spend probably 20 minutes, 30 minutes every day just playing those. Well, and obviously, I think for me that's the right combination of meaningful music and also the technical side of it, because I'm side reading those etudes, so I kind of learn how to side read better. I've now progressed to the later third of the book, so they're quite high in pitch actually, quite challenging technically to maintain the airflow, have a sweet sound in the whole register. Um, um, but the main thing I always remind myself is play music every time. Every note that you're playing has to be musical.
That's really cool. I like that. I think we kind of touch base with making music fun and adding it. But as far as like the younger students, and you mentioned this a few moments ago, just recently, is that you said you had wished that you had someone to share kind of the practicing regimens uh, for younger Daniel. You'd wish that you had kind of a guideline or something to work by, and so it sounded like that you would encourage our younger audience, the younger euphonium artists and musicians alike, to add a segment of what meaningful pieces of music that they would like to target.
I think, well, something that just came up when you spoke about it is ownership of your own practice. I think most well most teachers are great, and they give you homework and they have a plan for you what to do, and they may even ask you what etude do you want to do, what piece do you want to play, and offer you some suggestions. But the more a student takes ownership and it becomes sort of a collaboration between student and teacher, uh, uh, that's where you will end up doing stuff that is more meaningful to you, and then you will eventually learn more from it, because that's how the brain works. If something is meaningful to you and if you're happy doing it, you will learn more from it.
That's a great way to wrap up this second in series with Mr. Daniel Hohm from Germany and in Manchester till he graduates this next year. And so we'll leave all his links down in the info section once they're live. as well as continue the series, especially after the Austrian Brass Band Nationals, to find out what that other piece of music was that he's been
Yeah.
working on consistently. And we're going to continue this for a short post recording segment for our podcast listeners. So be sure to find that out, as I said, in the links below and on internationaleuphoniumsummit.com/Daniel-Hohm. And you have the spelling of his names right up on his background there, Daniel-Hohm. Thank you so much for joining us today, and be sure to like, subscribe, and follow both the Living History series as well as Daniel on his journey next time. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.
As we